All right, well, sounds good. Good afternoon, everybody. We're excited to bring this content to you. Welcome to the Elite Advisor Growth Series, a series designed to give you unique, proven, and valuable ideas, tools, resources, and expertise to take your financial practice to the next level of elite. This is a six-part series, once a month, over a 6-month period that will cover many valuable things in each part. The audience is encouraged to watch all 6 parts over time to get the full content and benefit. We're going to start with a 2-minute introductory video, introducing our experts, giving our disclaimer, and then our call to action, and then proceed to the content. Unfortunately, due to the large volume of attendees, we had hundreds of people register for this webinar. We cannot give a question and answer portion as we would like to do. We'll try to address the frequently asked questions that we usually get from advisors we work with throughout the webinars that we do. And then we encourage everyone that does attend to reach out to us, especially Susan and I. We welcome questions. Each of our contact information is on our Zoom screen behind us as we speak, and also in the introduction video, the 2-minute introduction video. And then we're going to end it with a 1-minute follow-up video that'll have all our contact information in there as well. Thank you for attending. And now on to the 2-minute video and then the content that we hope you've been looking for.
Welcome to this part of the Susan Danzig Financial Strategies Group Elite Advisor Growth Series. The purpose of the series is to provide talented advisors with elite concepts and ideas, and also to connect them to the proven and needed tools, resources, and support they need to help them thrive and grow in today's highly competitive financial services arena. Susan Danzig, a top nationally recognized business development coach for financial advisors, and an accomplished expert at helping advisors with their critically important branding and messaging. And Jim Farmer, an industry leader and founder of Financial Strategies Group, FSG, a leading firm that works with advisors and firms across the country, providing custom financial solutions for the affluent, have partnered together to provide this important content and series. Throughout this valuable series, Susan, Jim, and other presenting professionals will share unique and proven strategies they actively use to help top advisors enhance their clients' financial outcomes and achieve much greater personal and professional success. This series provides an overview of these innovative strategies, tools, and resources, and is not intended as specific advice for any individual client or situation. Clients are encouraged to consult with appropriate professionals to address their unique circumstances before making decisions. The Elite Advisor Growth Series strongly recommends that individual advisors and teams who find value in this series take the next step by connecting with Susan Danzig and Financial Strategies Group. They offer the expertise, tools, and resources you need to successfully apply this valuable content and will guide you in effectively implementing these strategies to achieve meaningful results. Please find their contact information here. The right ideas, tools, resources, and support are always necessary ingredients for your elite success. We are very excited to provide this valuable content for your benefit. We believe this series will help you refine your brand, improve your critical messaging, add elite value proposition to your business, and skyrocket your client attraction results. We look forward to supporting your elite growth as a top financial advisor, and we hope you enjoy this whole series. Thank you, and enjoy this important complimentary content.
Thank you, everyone. Now we're going to go on to the other part.
All right. So welcome, everyone, to our Elite Advisor webinar series, and we thank you for being with us all today. Our focus is on showing you effective strategies for prospecting within your own book. We'll discuss several key ideas that can help you gather more assets under management from your existing clientele. And we plan to cover each topic in depth in future webinars, providing you with additional value to support your business growth. We are available to connect on an individual basis to address any specific questions you might have. These podcasts are all designed to help you prospect within your own book. And to do this, you need to think outside of the box. to really differentiate yourself from your competitors. Today, you'll hear a number of easy ways to stand out from your competition, which will help you on your journey to attracting AUM and referrals like never before. So it's not about a product. It's about how it can solve problems for your clients. Most clients hold assets in numerous places, and our goal is to show you how to turn those other assets into AUM from inside your own book. The first thing that you need to do is create a magnet to what clients really want. Jim, why don't you tell us a little bit more about this concept?
I sure will, Susan. Thanks. The interesting thing is we do hundreds of client profiles every year where we get to look at all the assets that a high net worth client might have. And we're finding a lot of trends that are really interesting. One of the trends is maybe only 40% of the money is with an FA. And then the rest, another third is with banks and CDs type of places, and another third in discount brokerage firms. And so today we're going to focus in on trying to grabbing those assets and increasing that 40% maybe to 70 or 80%, obviously increasing AUM. In other meetings, we're going to talk about still prospecting inside your own book, but it may not even be assets. It could be how do you talk to a client that owns a business, or how do you get to talk to their brothers and sisters? And we have all these different ways that help you increase AUM at the end of the day. That's the main thing. And you need to have something that they want, and they want really bad, that's different than what everyone else is offering. So if you go to the next slide, the normal allocation that when we look at these hundreds of profiles is very little money is in a tax-free bucket. So when a 65-year-old is ready to retire and we look at their assets, it's really common to see nice homes, non-qualified accounts, and qualified money. What we don't see is a large amount of tax-free money. So if we can focus in, and you don't have to be 40 to start this, you could be 60 or 70, and within 2 years create what you want it to be. But if we can create about a third of the money in taxable, a third tax deferred, and a third tax free, we really think that can make a difference. And go ahead.
And I would imagine, are you going to tell us what that 1/3 tax-free bucket really makes in terms of that difference?
And what you're going to find out is it does more than just make a difference in terms of you reallocating money and maybe making money. What you're going to find out is they're going to start giving you referred leads like you've never had before. Because when somebody gets something they really want, they tell everybody. And we've had experience with this seriously over the last 7 years. And the amount of prospects and new AUM coming in is amazing.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, what would eMoney use as a default tax bracket for the $120,000 of income?
Yeah, and we're picking on eMoney, but it's any Monte Carlo type of retirement planning system. And they typically will have a default. And we're starting out with someone who wants to retire with an income goal of 120,000. And I think you would all kind of agree that the default number for that is about 22% tax bracket. What would it look like if we could dramatically lower that? And what kind of response would you get out of clients? So if we had achieved the ability to have 1/3 of the income coming from ordinary income, and about half of that in this scenario is from Social Security, and another half from RMDs, and then long-term capital gains, of course, would be a marketable security part of the pie, and then another third from tax-free places. What would that do, and would it be a game changer? So go ahead. Do you have a question, Susan, or?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, why haven't I seen this before?
Because muni bonds have been so low, 1%, less than 1%. They also didn't protect money like they were hoped to 2 or 3 years ago. They were down 14% on average. And getting money into a Roth, you have to pay a lot of taxes. And it just becomes difficult, we're going to show you ways to fill that bucket, that tax-free bucket. And we're going to show you ways, hopefully, to do it where it brings in new AUM. So where do we get the money is going to be part of the key here. But I'm going to explain this to you real quick. Of $40,000 of the 120 is coming from half Social Security and half RMDs. Every retired couple over 65 gets a $33,000 standard deduction, and only 85% of Social Security is considered taxable. I didn't do any charitable giving. I didn't do any $10,000 property tax. I didn't do anything besides those two things. But that takes 40,000 of ordinary income and drops it down to 6,000. So the tax on 6,000 is only 1.2%. It's the low, you're below poverty level. And it's $470. And we're talking about federal tax. The tax on $7,000 from a state might be another $200 or less. It's not meaningful, but we're not in a seminar. We can't very well talk about state specific. But $470 federal tax. If I take another 40,000 from capital gains, now I could be using cost basis here, but I'm just using all of it subject to cap gains, which normally you'd have some cost basis that wouldn't be taxable. And the $40,000, 96,000 of capital gains or dividends is allowed to come off of a portfolio, and there's zero tax. But you include the ordinary income in that math, but we're still below the 96,000. So that 40,000 has no tax on it. So if we could pull money off of muni bonds, Roth IRAs, and life insurance and other tax-free entities and take another 40,000, the only thing we paid was $470 on 120,000. That's a lot better than 25 or 26,000 that the programs are saying. What would happen to that Monte Carlo chance of success if you plugged in 1% instead of 22%? It would go way up. More importantly is, why didn't my other advisors show me that? And
And I'm wondering, what would be the prospecting phrase that the advisors can use that works to introduce those this idea to their clients, or to get a meeting with their client to get permission to continue the conversation here?
so any training program, something that's been around our whole life, is got to have an elevator speech. And I've not really heard a lot of great elevator speeches that financial advisors come up with that makes them stand out and being different and makes the client immediately go, oh my gosh, I want to have lunch with you tomorrow. So our elevator speech related to this slide is, when someone says what you do for a living, I work with a team of people that specializes in showing you how to lower your tax bracket in retirement. And our goal is to get you below 10%. And I'm telling you, no one else is saying that. It's a unique thing. You can call up one of your own clients and say, hey, next time we get together, or let's get together next week. And I think I have a way to really substantially lower your tax bracket in your retirement. And I'd like to, sit down, let's talk about it. No one's going to hesitate. They're going to come running in. And more importantly, when they leave, they're going to go tell all their business partners, and they're going to tell their brothers, their sisters, their parents. That's what we want. And so it becomes the thing that no one's talking about. We all talk about fees. Got to lower the fees. Got to lower the fees. What about the taxes? The taxes are the one they really want. So you're creating something that they're really interested in. Go to the next slide. So what about a little higher income, $240,000 income goal? And in this case, we're pulling 80,000 from the three buckets. Same kind of math, but we do owe a little bit more because we're going over some thresholds. But it comes out to be $8,688, 3.6%. Now, I'm telling
So
you.
please explain the Medicare part too when you wrap up what you.
Yeah. So the 240,000 is with e-money would probably be closer to 30% default. We're down to 3.6. But many times this income part that's coming off the tax-free bucket doesn't count as income. So when Medicare does the math on what you owe, they're not counting 240,000, they're counting 160,000 of income. And in that case, you go from 5,800 per person in the marriage, so times two, down to 4,193. Again, that's something that clients are looking for. There's less, I don't want to pay as much on my Medicare. I think we're going to go to the next one. Okay, now we're talking about the doctors, the lawyers, the business owners, the little more affluent. And I'm going to show you 500,000. We've shown doctors that have $2 million income goals and got them below 10%. So I'm showing the last one to give you an idea that this works on 120,000, which is your more average client. 240 is a good client. 500 is probably your top of the book type of thing. And then of course, there's always a little bit on top of that that want more. We're really good at showing people how to lower the bracket. Same 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Same kind of standard deduction and 85% of the Social Security. We have their Social Security bumped up to double, but not, and we stopped at 40,000. But we end up at 9.3% on 500,000. By the way, 500,000 is a 1%er. 1%, only 1% of the public makes $500,000 a year, and we're getting them down to 9.3. And I think that is part of the, if you call it a trap, to create the discussion to gather more assets than you had before. More importantly, would you agree that most people would say, I want that tax-free bucket? How do I get it? And that's what we're going to talk about, is how do I get it? And more importantly, what you care about is where are we going to get it from? Okay. What's the next slide? Okay, go ahead.
Now that you've seen why the 1/3 tax-free bucket's so important, do you find the clients want a 1/3 tax-free bucket?
I find they want it, and they want it really bad. And if you could have a crystal ball or a magic wand and get any product available in that tax-free bucket, the perfect thing would be a Roth. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And there's only one problem. If a client makes over 200 and some $1,000 a year, if they want to do a Roth, they have to pay a lot of tax to get the money into the Roth. So there's restrictions on how much money we could put into a Roth. But the perfect investment could be a Roth. And I think we'd all agree that if I could put any amount of money into a Roth, how much would I do? And go to the next page. So I'm going to talk about life insurance a little bit here, but I'm not talking about life insurance like you've ever seen before, because regular life insurance sometimes goes around and says it's a Roth alternative. By the time you look at all the fees, I would question whether or not that's a fair statement. But life insurance does have very similar tax treatment. All the money grows tax-free. It pretty well comes out tax-free. And when you die, it's tax-free. So that's very similar. But usually the fees on insurance are really high. But there is another type of insurance out there called institutional life. And many of you have probably not seen this, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit later on about how long it's been around. But if I take a 50-year-old, go ahead, Susan.
And I was going to ask, does this slide include the FA fees on the Roth?
Yeah, so what we're doing here is we're going to compare institutional life to a Roth that has a 1% advisory fee on the Roth. And we can do comparisons on real numbers on every situation. This example is $200,000 a year for 3 years being invested. $200,000 going into a Roth, other than having to pay the tax, would be pretty tricky. And you can do the backdoor Roth. You can do, we say do all those things, but I'm not sure about the one where you have to pay the tax up front. But the same amount of money going into both investments. Surprisingly enough, at age 90, the Roth is about 5.7% real rate of return on, and I think this is assuming about a 6.5% gross. And the insurance is at 5.75. It's really close. Let's call it a tie. If somebody dies, the death benefit kicks in and moves it a little bit ahead of the Roth. If someone dies at age 70, the institutional life insurance is way ahead because they got the death benefit kicker. I don't care about being ahead. I don't care if it's a 0.5% fee instead of 1% and the Roth wins by a little bit. I'm going to call it a tie. And if it's a tie, I can't put as much money as I want into a Roth, but I can put as much money as I want into this institutional life. And now all of a sudden that opens the door for something very similar to a Roth that I can actually do.
Great. And is there a magic one-liner to prospect this with this idea?
Right. So you're playing golf and you get paired up with a doctor. And you're talking to the doctor. You could use the first line we talked about. You specialize in lowering your tax bracket, and we're really good at getting you to below 10%. But hey, what do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? And he says he's a doctor, and you say you're an advisor, and et cetera. But hey, if you could put as much money as you absolutely wanted to, there was no restriction on how much money you could put into a Roth. How much would you put into that Roth? And the most common answer is as much as I could. I mean, a lot. Okay. And that is the key for you having a lunch appointment with that person. The same thing with your clients. If you're talking to your clients and you're doing e-money or one of the Monte Carlo programs, hey, if I can change these numbers and factor in a really large Roth, look what happens. And it would dramatically change the numbers. And you can play that what if game with them and get them all excited. But then we're going to pivot to the institutional life. So go to the next page. Okay, what the heck is institutional life? It's actually something that most of you have read about. Most of you have actually had this on your own life. If you work for any major investment company like UBS or Wells or Morgan Stanley, those companies have what's called COLI on every one of you. Matter of fact, 50% of all life insurance in America is corporate-owned life insurance. Most major S&P 500 companies have hundreds of millions of dollars of this COLI on their books, and they have since the 1970s. Not a new product at all. Hasn't changed at all. Go ahead, Susan.
And I'm noticing that one of the ideas looks like a new idea, but it's not new. It's been around for over 50 years. In fact, it seems too good to be true. Is it?
What it is the fees are all stripped out. Why would these companies do this? By the way, most major banks have 10 billion each. JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, they all have 20 billion of this on their books. You can imagine they are not buying a regular life insurance product that normally we buy. Okay. And Susan, you might ask me, do they need a corporation to do this? Equitable is the only insurance company that I know that has agreed to this, but they're offering the exact same product that the S&P companies are buying, the big banks are buying. By the way, the banks call it BOLI, but it's the same concept. And they have it now available without a corporation to white collar professionals, doctors, lawyers, engineers, financial advisors, architects. Professional advisors can now, most of your clients can buy this. And they've, instead of having millions of dollars as a minimum, the minimum's down to 50,000 as an investment. And so I'm going to show you how it works. And pop to the next page, Dan. Okay, this is a 50-year-old normal health. Paying 200,000 a year, like we were talking about a minute ago, for 3 years. That's actually 2 years and 1 day because you put the money in up front. Okay. And this is not like a 401k where they're taking part of their income and investing it. I am reallocating $600,000 over 2 years into that tax-free bucket. So I'm repositioning money into the tax-free bucket. And I am doing that over a 2-year period because it is insurance and they do have the same modified endowment MEC rules. I can explain that later.
Okay.
That we got to follow.
So this $80,000 of income is the same as the example tax bucket slide at 240,000 of total income, right?
Exactly. So What's happened here is we're showing the 50-year-old going to 65 and then pulling 80,000 a year out to age 90, which looks like a regular life insurance proposal. But what doesn't look normal, and by the way, that does not count as income. Remember before we're talking about Medicare? It doesn't show up on your tax return. The way money comes out of life insurance, you get your original investment first, it's FIFO, and then you're allowed to borrow the money because this is institutional. This $80,000 is coming out at a 0 loan rate, but it's coming out tax-free and it does not show up on your tax return, and it doesn't affect your Social Security. It doesn't affect Medicare cost. It doesn't affect anything. And it doesn't affect how dividends are taxed. So it's a tremendous way to lower brackets. Again, if the fees are lower, watch what happens. 200,000 goes in year one, and we have it earning 7.15%. We'll talk about that in a second. The surrender value in year one is 213,000. I don't know any insurance that looks like that. So all I did is reallocate the money, and it's totally liquid. No surrender penalties. You can get at the money whenever you want. Now, depending on how long you wait, you could end up paying tax if you completely surrendered the contract, but we'll hold that back for another day. I do think it's important that, see this 1.195? We've taken 600,000 and turned that into a $1,195,000 tax-free bucket. Now they may even have some Roths or maybe bonds to go with that. That'd be great. That 80,000 coming out of it was from that, excuse me, 240,000 income example that we got them down to 4%. So we were able to reposition 600,000 and create a 4% tax bracket in retirement.
I heard that the $80,000 of income coming off this product is not even income. So what does that mean?
Yeah, because it's a loan, I kind of mentioned before, but because there's a loan and return of principal, it doesn't count as income, and I think it's really good to reemphasize that. And if you kind of notice, I didn't mention the death benefit, and no one cares about the death benefit. It's the absolute minimum by law, and we make it the minimum by law all the way through. This 50-year-old has to buy 2.7 million. If they have term insurance, they don't need it anymore. I mean, the cost of that term insurance is $200 or $300 when you do that math on the whole thing. So that's it's just a side product. It's not really anything to do with it. And most of the time, the money's in the estate because we're worried about retirement income.
And do I need a corporation to buy this product?
No, we do not need the corporation to buy this. And I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit, but what's 7.15 have to do with anything? And I stole your letters, Susan. If I look at the S&P 500 since the 1930s, and I look at rolling 20-year periods, the absolute worst the S&P 500 has done over a 20-year period is 7.15%. So we plugged in 7.15%. This is a variable contract. There are 95 different high-grade investments. There's the S&P, there's all oil, there's BlackRock, Lazard, American funds. It looks just like a regular variable contract with all the fees stripped out and all the surrender fees gone. And we have the attorneys, the CPAs, when they help the clients research this, say, hey, can I buy this? We have financial advisors buy this all the time. It's not, you're not buying anything. You reallocate the money and the money's all there. It's just a reallocation play. And we have people putting millions of dollars into it. We have people, reallocating 2, 3, 4, 5 million. That's not an uncommon. We probably present 5 or 6 like that every week. And so 7.15 is if 50 people buy this, you get 50 different returns, just like a 401k. You can go in and out of it. There's an online web page that you can make your allocations from and get daily up feeds on the values. Matter of fact, the values can be daily put right into e-money and a lot of other programs. So it becomes part of their portfolio. It's not something sitting in a drawer. Okay.
Okay, and are there any other associated fees with this product?
Yeah, there is insurance fees, and we typically are very competitive when it comes to the overall insurance fees. We also have this as a commission product, and we have it as a RIA product. So you can do one that's commissionless and then just charge your regular fee. And it depends on what your BD is and are you allowed to do RIA type business. And then I can't really go through the commissions, unfortunately, because every BD has different rules, but it's a heaped commission. So it is very low, but then they heap it. So it's a good day. Let's put it that way. And it's different for every firm. So we're happy to go through that depending on what BD you have. Overall, the fees come in right around 1%. And if I compare that to taxes, if I earn 7.15 and net 6.15, I'm probably only netting 4.5 to 5 if I was in a regular taxable investment. And we can do a side-by-side comparison of this to any terms you want. I can put in your fee, any tax bracket, and crunch the numbers side by side, look at any year you want. But I'm saying it's about 1%. That's assuming you never die. And that's kind of a joke, right? You're going to die. And if I put $600,000 in and I die in year 5 and my family gets 2 million, I would argue the insurance fees cost nothing because that's a phenomenal rate of return, right? If you die before age 80, there are net no fees. If I die at 90, it's about 50 basis points. And if I die at 100, it's about 100 basis points. So that's just a different way of looking at it. We're all going to die. And if you incorporate it and compare it, 50% of us die before 80, 75% of us die before 90, and the rest of us die between 90 and 100. Or 105, whatever, type of thing.
Are we ready to go to the next slide?
I think we are.
Okay.
Okay. So where's the money going to come from? And go ahead, Susan.
And is it true that $60 billion of annuities with buffers were sold last year?
So buffers are these new annuities that have been around. Equitable's actually had them since 2010. And they're the ones that say, if the market is down, you have a buffer, 10%, 15%, 20%. There's all kinds of different ones out there. And then there's a cap on the upside protection. So 5 of the funds that are inside of this institutional product are like buffered annuities. And we have the -10, -15, and -20. And how can we use that to fill in the tax-free bucket? Well, I said a lot of people have money at the bank and they're 5% CDs, 5.3 or whatever the CD rate is. Well, we all know 5.3% CD, when you subtract taxes and everything else, is probably closer to 3.5 to 4%, depending on your client, right? And that bonds and the inverted curve make it difficult to really get a great yield. Might even be less than the 5, but you might get to 6. But you're still looking at net 4 to 5. If I also look at the annuities, which I think are phenomenal investments inside of IRAs. And like Susan said, over 60 billion went into these buffered annuities last year, but a lot of them were in IRAs. If you have non-qualified money, and I'm trying to create a tax-free bucket with it, now instead of the money growing and then coming out taxable ordinary income and dying, and it is taxable to the heirs at ordinary income. Now inside the life insurance, it grows tax-free and it comes out tax-free, and then the kids get the death benefit tax-free. It could be estate taxes, but there's estate taxes on Roths and everything else. And we have ways to get around that potentially. So I don't like to compare this to the S&P, and I jumped on you, Susan. But the S&P should outperform a buffered program. And what I like to do is compare it to the bonds and the CDs out there. and I'd like to look at the negative 20% buffer. And right now, the negative 20% buffer has a 12% cap on the upside. And I do think it's a little important that this is not like an index life product. This is a registered product. It's FINRA. You have to have a security license, or if you're an RIA, you have to be an RIA to sell this. And because it's regulated, the caps or whatever the market will buy, the price of the cap changes. It's really interesting. If interest rates go up, bonds get hurt. If interest rates go up on this, there's more money to buy the cap on the upside, and the cap goes up. So 2.5 years ago, when interest rates were a little bit higher, the negative 20% cap was 17%. Now it's 12. So this is a great way to look at a bond portfolio and say, why don't you hedge rising interest rate risk by having part of the money in the negative 20% buffer? Why don't we look at the CDs that are at the bank and move those in to the same thing? And does that make sense? And I'm going to talk about does it make sense or not in a second. Well, actually, let's go to the next slide. And so again, I'm focusing in on the negative 20% buffer, and this just talks about how the buffers work depending on what happens in the market. Obviously, if you have a down year and the market's down 15%, you get 0. The market's down 25%, you get -5. The market's up 8%, you get 8%. The market's up 20%, you get 12%.
So would I be better off just investing in the S&P index fund?
Over the long run, I think the S&P statistically would always outperform this. But when I'm comparing it to bonds, I think, go to the next slide. I started in 1985, I put 100,000 in for 7 years, just as a hypothetical example. In 20 years, we're at 6.67% net rate of return. The 700,000 grew to 2.1 million. I go to the next page.
And now, before you move to the next page, are the IRR numbers net or gross of fees?
Yeah, they're net. So the net of commissions, they're net of insurance costs, and they're net of taxes. 6.61% all the way back to 85, and it's been consistently high 5s to 6. How many people that have money at the bank aren't motivated? We have millions of dollars coming in from the bank. And that's a great way for you to get money that you don't have and get it back. But let's say you do have that money. My financial advisor does have, I have this as well, but I also have that short-term 7-day paper, and I'm getting 5.3. I'd much rather have 6.7 over that. But most advisors don't make any money on that 5.7. So you can take money that the bank doesn't have, you have it, but turn it into something that actually makes you money, and more importantly, gets them to run around and brag about it. And they tell their father, they tell their brother, they tell their sister, their business partner. And we got to go back to that, lowering their tax bracket to 3 or 4 or 5%. So how am I going to fill that bucket? Oh, let's take the CDs. Let's take that 7-day paper and let's put it into something like this. And we can talk in more detail about which is more safe, the negative 20% buffer. If you look at this, basically in 08, the market was down enough to be meaningful where they end up losing money. But since 1985, that was really the only meaningful time that it was down that mattered. So that's I think an exciting difference, and we get people really excited about this. So again, we're trying to get new assets. We're trying to lower their tax bracket. They get excited about a better rate of return on a conservative thing. They get excited about interest rates. If they do go up, I think they're heading down right now, but if they do go up, then we have some extra protection that we didn't have 2 or 3 years ago. And at the same time, we're lowering their tax bracket, and that's really what they want. And that's what you're trying to do, give them what they want.
Exactly.
Yeah. Go to the next page.
So where do clients have the money that could be used for the different buffer options?
well, they have it in the CDs and they have it in money markets and they have it in bond portfolios. And sometimes we even go after the high dividend stock portfolios. Those are the kind of things that we look at. And now I'm flipping around a little bit to the opposite side of the equation. We just talked about conservative. How do I get that CD, the conservative type of thing? But what about your competitor might have money? So imagine one of your, I don't need to say names, but another wirehouse has a $5 million account, and you would love to get that money and bring it over. And so we kind of have a magic question. And the question is, how much is that portfolio costing you every year in taxes? And in my example, I said 100,000. But there's really two easy answers from that. One is, oh, not very much at all. I'm going to make an argument. You might be paying an advisor 50 basis points, 100 basis points, and they're not moving the money around. They're not doing anything. Why are you even paying them? And there's an argument why a lot of that money ends up at discount brokerage firms because of that. So if they say I'm not paying very much tax, then there's not a lot of things going on inside the cat thing. But a lot of times if they say, oh my gosh, I'm paying 100,000, 200,000 a year, I'm getting clobbered. I hate it. That's the other answer. That's the one we're looking for here. And typically most portfolios that you all build for your clients are pretty tax efficient. Obviously, S&P index is tax efficient. There's a lot of things that are tax efficient. But if I look at the part of the pie, maybe a 10% piece, it might be in aggressive funds. And aggressive funds might be gold, tech, health, international, things like that. And those are things that we might want to hire a manager because they're a little more aggressive. And who's been the winner lately? Those funds. NASDAQ did great. Tech did great. Health's done great, right? But they can be really brutal in creating taxes. Okay, so let's pop to the next page. This is go ahead, Susan.
I was just going to say, is this a good idea for all the clients' money?
No, it's no different than, you don't want to put 100% of the money in crypto. That's crazy. But for that piece of the pie that's triggering all the taxes, and the one liner that you might say is, hey, if I can show you a way to reduce the taxes, but still have the same performance that you're used to without the tax bill, would that be of interest? And then later on, you're going to hopefully get them to say, why didn't my guy or gal show me that? Okay. So this is a real life case. And these are some of the funds that are inside the institutional life insurance. And this is an actual financial advisor that bought this for himself. And in the beginning of 2002, I think it's 2002.
2022.
Yeah, 2022, he picked these funds and they were up 36%. Pretty good. So we went and looked up all the funds and we figured out what would have been the portfolio turnover rate of those funds. And it was an average of 62%. And a lot of that 62% is short-term gain, which is taxed as ordinary income. So that's where we get these $100,000 bills. And of course, as an advisor, you would say, be quiet. I made you 36%. What are you complaining about? But they do complain about it. But we have these funds inside the insurance that grows tax-free, comes out tax-free, et cetera. And if I only assumed a 30% turnover ratio, 36 outside of the insurance would only net 29. And we're netting about 35. If I go to the 60% turnover ratio, and there's funds out there that have over 100% turnover, we would end up with more like 22% net. So this is a tremendous opportunity to do two things. One is, why didn't the other guy show me this? Yes, I want that. I'm going to move the whole portfolio over because I want to pay less. That's what we're doing here. We're trying to get assets that your client might have somewhere else. But more importantly, I've just filled up the tax-free bucket with 10% of the portfolio, and I made it more tax efficient than it was before. Is that a risky tax-free bucket where the other example was a conservative one? Yes. But the argument is, I don't care. They already had it in tech, and it was going to be down 20, it would have been down 20. If it's up 30 or 40, it'd be up 40. That part's neutral. What isn't neutral is the tax effect. And what isn't neutral is the net result of lowering their tax bracket down to 20 or 30%, down to 3, 4, 5, 6%. So I instead of filling the bucket with tax-free with CDs and conservative investments, I might fill it up with the riskiest part of their portfolio. And even if it's your client, they'll end up with more money at age 65, and that's more assets under management for you. Right? Because if you're not having to give all that money to the government all the way through, I'm going to end up with more money. What's that going to do to the Monte Carlo thing if I'm paying less tax every year? A lot. So, I've improved their overall portfolio. I've created oh, I want that. And oh, by the way, I also got to lower my tax bracket. Okay, so you can see, we went after CDs. We even go after the discount brokerage firms by 9 of the funds are indexed accounts. The fees are 40 basis points. I know it's a little bit more than 5 basis points, but it's no tax. And we can show a comparison of apples to apples or in the same rate of return, but later on pulling money out and actually using it for retirement. And the same risk, it's still in the S&P 500, destroys the discount brokerage firm. The Fidelity and the Schwab and whatever. But more importantly, I'm taking that money from that discount brokerage firm and filling the tax-free bucket and lowering their tax bracket. They can't do that at the discount brokerage firm as easily. If they actually say, I'm never going to touch it, I'm going to wait till I die, then my kids get a step up. Well, we can have it where they pay less tax along the way. They can move in and out of indexes, and they get the death benefit, which is just like a step up, but it's better. So if they don't want the money, this is a good alternative. If they do want the money, it's a good alternative. And more importantly, we're showing them how to lower their tax bracket in retirement. We're showing them how to make a better Monte Carlo run, more chances of success. Why didn't my person or the other person show me this? And that's how you get the money. That's how you get the referrals. Okay. Next one, Dan.
This next one, before you jump in, could you explain to us, do you have to have a medical exam to buy this one? What if my client's too old to qualify for the product? And ultimately, how does generational planning work with this?
Great question. Okay. So first of all, what age bracket would you probably be looking for to take advantage of that product to fill up the tax-free bucket? And the answer is typically 35 to 55. We're selling 23-year-olds all the way up to 95-year-olds. Well, how in the world can we do that? First of all, you do need an exam, unless you have 10 business partners all going in together. But as a general rule, you do need a full exam. They do have the easy underwriting where you can get it done, the whole thing done in 3 days. And if you're under 60, 70% of the cases are issued really quickly. And sometimes you don't need an exam. But if it's a larger amount, someone's reallocating 500,000, $1 million, they will almost always need an exam. I think 150,000 a year is the threshold for no exam. It is much easier to qualify for. This is not really about death benefit. The company's looking for assets, just like they are in annuities. And if they're overweight, they got blood pressure, it doesn't affect the numbers barely at all. So that's good news. But if they have a real disease, they just recently, they have cancer, they have heart attack, we had a person who needed a lung transplant, they have a real problem. They can go find a body. Now, what does that mean? So I personally am 68 years old. My sons are white collar professionals and they're in their early 40s. So they qualify for it. But I can take my money and use one of my kids as the insured or both. And as the owner, I have full control of the money. It's an owner-driven contract. So that money didn't go to my kids. It's totally mine. I use it to fill up my tax-free bucket. I'm 68 years old. It takes me 2 years and a day to fill my tax-free bucket to lower my tax bracket. And since I'm 68 years old and maybe I have had some medical issues, I pick my kids. What an opportunity to get to meet my 2 kids that are white collar professionals, right? So guess what happens? I'm going to take income out to lower my bracket, and I'm going to do it as a loan. And then 20 years from now, I'm going to die. And my kids are going to have a policy that's still in place. It's on their lives. They will inherit that policy. They will then have a policy with a loan on it. They can take some of my other money and pay the loan off. And more likely, they're going to be in their 60s, ready to retire. And we just filled up their tax-free bucket. We showed their kids how to go to retire at less than 10% bracket. And don't you think that's a great way so that if I die, there's a bridge between you and the kids? Because you're showing them how to lower their tax bracket. They're going to come in, you're going to show them how to lower their tax bracket. And guess what? You're going to keep that money. And we all know that 70 to 80% of that money is not staying when the senior people die. It's going to discount brokerage firms and whatever, but it's a great way to build that bridge. What happens when you have a 40, 45-year-old and all they have is IRA money and a house? How do I fill the tax-free bucket? Oh, well, tell me about your parents. And oh, they're 75 years old, blah, 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 blah. Hey, do they have any CDs? Or do they have any money markets? And we go to those buffer programs, for example, and we can let them own it, have complete control of the money. We can show them how to lower their tax bracket, but we can fill the tax-free bucket for your 45-year-old client. And I just found the money to fill the bucket up for them. And you can model it out. And the 45-year-old, 20 years from now, more than likely the parent has died. The money moves down, fills up the bucket. If there's a loan there, we use other money to pay the loan off, and off we go. And I just got to meet the parents, or I got to meet the kids. And again, that's what we're doing here, is trying to prospect inside your own book. And it's a phenomenal way. My mother actually owns my contract. She's 95 years old. I'm 68 years old. And I'm creating my lower the bracket for myself. And the 95-year-old's money is being used. By the way, she has Alzheimer's and doesn't need the money. And so it was just sitting there, again, in CDs. And then we reallocated it into a tax-free bucket that I will eventually get for my retirement. But we do it a lot, and it's fun, but it's a great way to get to meet the parents or the next generation coming up. And either way, it's a great way to get new AUM. Go to the next page. Okay. This is the last one, and it's a little bit of a teaser because the next series that we're going to have next month is you're going to talk to your clients and ask them, hey, I'd really like to meet your attorney and CPA. And by the way, if we're going to lower their tax bracket in retirement, wouldn't it be fun to work with their CPA and do some mock tax returns and get to know the CPA and get to know the attorney? And I'm going to tell you right now, we show them this, what we're going to do for their client, and they are the same. And they're going to go, can I do this? I also bring in, would you be willing to sponsor a seminar? And I'll bring in 10 or 20 of my top clients. Again, you're prospecting inside your own book. You're doing the right thing, getting to know the attorney and CPA, and et cetera. But next month, we're also going to teach you a way to show that attorney and CPA how to make a whole bunch of money. And they'll start giving you leads. And I know the holy grail is, how do I get more leads out of this attorney and CPA? I keep giving them clients and they never give me a client back. Well, I'm promising you, we've figured out a way to break that, and we're getting leads like crazy, and the net worth of the clients is really big. And I'm going to tease you with how we're doing it, but it also has to do with filling the tax-free bucket. So a grantor trust is what all the attorneys set up. That's the GRATs, the defective trust, the spousal access trust, the generation skipping trust. All these trusts that mom and dad set up when they're wealthy goes into a grantor trust. And in a grantor trust, who pays the tax on that? The grantor. So I'm the father, I give money to my kids in a trust, and that trust earns and has a taxable event, I pay tax on it. If I want to give income off the grantor trust, or the trustee wants to give income to the kids, who pays the tax on that? The grantor. And when I die, is there a step up in basis on that money when I die? No, a grantor trust maintains the grantor's cost basis and never gets a step up. Well, if I take this institutional life, Susan, you got a question?
Well, I was just wondering, can you use this to get AUM from bank trust departments?
That's really fun. So let me say this last part, and then I'm going to tell you the answer to that. So if I use the institutional life inside of that trust, and now you move among the 95 funds, there's no taxable event back to the grantor. If I want to pull 200,000 a year out to give it to the kids as income, it doesn't count as income, and the grantor doesn't have to pay tax. And if I insure the grantor, when the grantor dies, the death benefit, all the money inside of there gets stepped up, because death benefit is like a step up. It's not a real step up, but it's better. It's always more. So we've eliminated the three big negatives of a grantor trust. And even if you have a grantor trust in your book, there may be a brother and a sister that are somewhere else, and you want to get that money. So you talk to the grantor or to the beneficiary and talk about all the tax advantages we can create and how we can lower their bracket by using the grantor trust money. And all of a sudden, there's two other accounts just as big with the brother and sisters. And so it's a great way to get to meet the brothers and sisters. And it's more likely to do it correctly, you're going to have to go meet the grantor, who obviously has got an estate tax problem. It's the kind of client you want to meet. So it's a great way, again, for you to meet all different directions. So if you have the grantor, I want to get all the kids. If you have one of the kids, I want to get the brothers and sisters and the grantor. So next time, we're going to spend the whole time talking about attorneys and how to get leads from attorneys, but to not work against the client's attorneys. We want to work with them, and we want to work with their account.
Absolutely. With that, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Susan. Great content. So much more to come. I'm going to leave this with our contact information. We strongly encourage you to find out more from both Susan and myself. And Jim, you've got his email as well for FSG. But with that,
the Elite Advisor Growth Series strongly recommends that individual advisors and teams who find value in this series take the next step by connecting with Susan Danzig and Financial Strategies Group. They offer the expertise, tools, and resources you need to successfully apply this valuable content and will guide you in effectively implementing these strategies to achieve meaningful results. Please find their contact information here. The right ideas, tools, resources, and support are always necessary ingredients for your elite success. We are very excited to provide this valuable content for you. We believe this series will help you refine your brand, improve your critical messaging, add elite value proposition to your business, and skyrocket your client attraction results. We look forward to supporting your elite growth as a top financial advisor, and we hope you enjoy this whole series. Thank you, and enjoy this important complimentary content.
thank you, everybody. Appreciate your attendance.
Bye, everybody.
Just one more thing. I'd like
Yeah.
to give you all a free gift. You know, part of your success and really implementing all of the ideas that Jim was speaking to is definitely incorporating their expertise into your process. That doesn't cost you anything, and you have the opportunity to have, you know, experts on your team talking with your clients, if you like. As well, from my perspective, integrating your communication strategy so that you're effectively communicating these pieces with your clients, and as well getting your brand in place up front so that you're clearly articulating who you serve, how you stand out, and the value you bring to the table. So if you want support with any of that, I invite you to take my free assessment that you can find at financialadvisorsuccessquiz.com, and you'll see that in the chat. It takes about 4 minutes to complete the assessment, and it'll give you an idea in 8 specific areas where you're on track for success and what you need to do to up-level your game. So with that, I invite you to take the quiz. We wish you a fabulous day, and we look forward to seeing you all next month on the next Elite Advisor Growth Series podcast, where we'll be talking about really getting those referrals from your attorneys effectively and from your clients' attorneys to really skyrocket your success. So with that, take good care.
Thank you, everybody.